The prodigal son did not leave because he had somewhere to go. He left because he couldn't bear to stay. He wanted to escape, not arrive. And when everything fell apart, something even deeper happened. He came to himself. This parable isn't just about forgiveness. It's about identity, alienation, and awakening. And in this video, we're going to break it open, not through moralism, but through philosophy, existentialism, and the structure of meaning itself. If you're unfamiliar with the parable, or you've heard it so many times that its plot eludes you, here's a brief summary. The parable is set in the house of a wealthy man who has two sons. One of them asks for his share of the profits and takes off to a faraway land. He ends up spending all his money and has to work for a farmer eating tasteless swine and living with pigs. Just having a miserable life. It is here when he comes to a moment where he comes to himself and realizes the stark contrast between a life he used to have and the life he has now, between the life that was established for him and the life he has established for himself. He realizes that even the servants of his father have a better life than this. So he sets off to return home and beg his father for a job as a servant. Upon arrival, though, his father rejoices, and instead of condemning him for wasting the money, welcomes him back not as a servant, but as a son, as an heir to his wealth. Meanwhile, the brother, who has always remained faithful, resents his father for giving his lost son something he never gave him. His father's reply, "Son, thou art ever with me, and all I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive, and was lost and is found." This parable is not very long. I suggest you read it for yourself. You can find it in Luke's Gospel, chapter 15, verse 11. This parable is one that has deeply transformed the way we understand identity, alienation, freedom, and the search for meaning. The parable begins abruptly, almost with a sense of impatience. The prodigal son cannot wait to leave and make a name for himself. But his urgency isn't fueled by a clear vision of where he's going. It's driven by a desire to break away from where he's been. He is eager to depart, not for the sake of his point of arrival, but the sake of his point of departure. His needs to escape outweigh any sense of responsibility or rootedness. He takes his inheritance without enduring the presence of his father, without living within the structure of love, discipline, and belonging that the father's house represents. In doing so, he reaps the benefits of grounded morality without participating in its source. He severs himself from meaning and drifts into the void of existential freedom. A freedom without form. It does not take long for this void to consume the fruits of his inheritance, leaving him in a state of spiritual famine. And it is there, at the brink of collapse, at the edge of despair, that something profound happens. He comes to himself. This is the pivotal moment of the parable, a moment of realization, a moment of awakening. And every awakening presupposes a kind of sleep, a forgetting, a misalignment of the self. It is in the depths of despair that prodigal son awakens, and for the first time sees clearly. He sets off without delay, not to make a name for himself, but to return to the name he has forgotten, son. This moment could not have occurred without the contrast, without the alienation he now suffers. The comfort and belonging he once had would remain invisible to him. He had to endure the collapse of immature autonomy to realize his truest place was always in the house of his father. Upon returning, his only hope is to be accepted as a servant, but he is met not with calculation, but with overflowing love. And just as we feel the warmth of this reunion, the attention of the parable shifts onto the older brother. Many today, like the elder son, find this parable unjust. They see the world as a pure meritocracy, where work is done not out of virtue, but as a transactional investment with expected return. This mindset runs so deep in our culture that we often reject the very possibility of selflessness, insisting that all action is self-serving at its core. But this is where the parable offers one of its most earth-shattering lines. "Son, thou art ever with me, and all I have is thine." The older brother had been living in his father's presence, yet treated the relationship like a contract. He could not see that what he sought had already been given. He simply had not received it. In a world where the highest good, love, has already been granted, the logic of meritocracy falls apart. It reduces life to a pursuit of fragmented fleeting rewards that can never rival the fullness of love. Where love is primary, calculation becomes secondary, if not absurd. This parable flips the logic of existentialism on its head. It exposes the short-sightedness of radical autonomy and the cold calculus of merit-based living. And instead, it points us towards something that is not only more sustainable, but eternal. The source itself, the love of the Father. Questions of identity and independence are still extremely relevant today, making the relevance of this parable transcend epochs and cultures. This parable, therefore, is very much alive, and it continues to break the cycle of transactional relationships and self-established identity. After all, even if we aim to establish our own name, the way we are perceived by others is not entirely up to us. Our reputation and behavior speak louder than the identity we hold in our heads. This shows us that we are not quite as in charge of our identity as we truly aim to be. We cannot be completely independent from reality. In fact, the more separated we are from reality, the more alien we become, even to ourselves. It is when we come to ourselves that we find the root of meaning, that being in relation to that which established us. This parable is echoed in Kierkegaard's A Sickness Unto Death. To put it crudely, Kierkegaard sees despair as a falling away from the self, as the failure to live within the balance of decision. We cannot aim to establish ourselves if we walk through life oblivious of who we are and why we are here. Try as we might to establish her own purpose, despair awaits him who is delusional enough to think that him alone is in charge of his destiny. Kierkegaard saw the self as an act of relation to that which established us. To God, essentially. This parable strikes at the heart of self and exposes the futility of selfish pursuits or mere nihilistic motifs. Though we are used to hearing the motivational rhetoric of boundless voluntarism, we are reminded here that without a proper understanding of reality and what gives reality life, we cannot do stuff simply because we've put our minds to it. Though in recent years, modern thinkers have awakened from this overly simplistic and excessively optimistic lie that has been packaged and repackaged through self-help books, modern psychology, and overpriced speakers, this rhetoric is still very much alive. And as quickly as it lifts one's spirits, reality thrusts itself towards it and reminds its readers of the limits of their will. This parable exposes all these mechanisms and points to the transcendent economy of truth, one which is not based on the exchange of input and output, one which sees man as man and recognizes his inherent worth, a worth that far surpasses any and all material possessions and is worth leaving behind an entire lifetime of accomplishments for.